What is going on, Sabres fans, and welcome to another episode of the Sabres Spotlight podcast where we shine a light on all things Sabres hockey. Ryan, what's going on?
What's going on, my man? It's been a couple weeks since we've been on here. We both survived some tornadoes today in the Buffalo area, so that's pretty good. I'm happy to see you alive, even though they didn't really come near us, but still.
We actually have tornadoes?
We
I
had
literally worked until like a couple hours ago. So,
we had two. They touched down in like the North Collins, Silver Creek areas,
hmm,
which is
interesting.
crazy. Tornadoes in like the Western New York area is almost unheard of.
So the last one that touched down was like right across the street from where I am, like at
No
that
way.
holiday showcase in Cheektowaga. Yeah, it was like whatever it was, like 30 years ago or something. Literally like right across the street from like my house. But
I had no idea. That's wild.
yeah, so there's a little like fun tornado fact for you. But yeah, it's been a couple weeks, so we're going to kind of cover a lot on this show, and we don't really have. I mean, we have a doc, but we're kind of going to spitball a little bit here. I think we'll start with the draft. That was obviously the first big thing since we talked a couple weeks ago. We've signed some RFAs. We got some UFA signings. The big trade that was a couple days ago with McLeod coming over. So there's a lot to get into. So it should be a nice, fun, jam-packed show to kind of get back into it. And we said this with the last episode. The offseason was just about to begin, and there's been a lot of moving pieces since a couple weeks ago. So what do you think of the draft? There's been a lot of speculation of, were we going to trade the pick? Were we going to stick and pick? And were we going to make any moves prior to? What do you think about what they did with the draft?
Well, it was interesting in the days leading up to the draft when they traded the 11th overall pick to San Jose and in exchange for 14th overall and an extra second round pick. And I was like, all right, that's a pretty good bit of business. Pick up an extra second round pick. You can use that as currency. And they ended up trading that second round pick for Beck Malenstein, which is like a out of left field, not exactly the type of player a team would normally trade for because he's kind of like a fourth liner, like a banger. He's fast as shit, so that's kind of cool. But it made no sense. And I will say later on in the offseason, it started to make a little bit more sense because they were clearly targeting like a specific skill set. But then they drafted Consta Helenius at 14th overall, and I'm happy with that. What do you think?
I'm certainly happy with the draft pick. I mean, like I've said before on the show, like I really don't care if they stick and picked or if they traded it, and it seems like they got great value. I mean, there was a lot of draft experts who had Hellenius going way higher. Like in the top. I've seen some as high as in the top three, and a handful in like the top eight. So I think similar to Benson last year, he fell to us a little bit, and you've seen some highlights out of development camp and things, and there's certainly a lot of skill there. So I'm fine with the draft pick, and I'm excited to kind of dig into his game a little bit more, like in the coming weeks, and seeing doing our own evaluations and seeing where we kind of come in with him, and can certainly see the path for him to be on the roster in a few years. The Malenstein trade, like it's weird because like that wasn't done obviously last time we talked, and we talked about how like, all right, like we made this deal, it doesn't make a ton of sense, like unless we're arming up for a bigger trade, and again you're just kind of expecting a little bit more, so like the return for that second round pick, like at the end of the day you feel like you're a little bit disappointed in that. But I've seen kind of like good and bad reviews as far as like this Beck Malenstein goes. So he's going to likely be a fourth line player. And if he can come in and just be an upgrade over like late stage Oposo and Gergensons, which seems likely, then did you overpay? Probably, but are you probably a little bit better on that fourth line? Yeah. And then when we get into some of the UFA signings later, like you got guys that are familiar with him playing on that line. So I can see where the vision is here.
Yeah, definitely an overpay. Definitely got memed for like multiple days. Like people are like, "Why would you do this?" But like complaining but that's the saber space these days. Honestly, you really can't do much without everyone making a big deal out of it, and we'll see what happens in the when the season starts. But I Hellenius, going back to the draft pick, he signed his entry level contract with the Sabres, which means he can come and play in Rochester for the season. So that's kind of exciting. I'm all signs point to him coming over to North America from Finland in starting his pro career here. He played against men. I mean, he was playing in the Finnish league as a young kid, getting like a ton of minutes.
Hmm.
So he's kind of probably more NHL ready than the typical 14th overall pick. So I'm excited to see how he plays, and it'll be cool because he'll be an hour away from us, and we can go watch him.
Yeah, yeah, and Jerry Fortin said how that factored into things about how him and Kevin Adams appreciated the fact that he's been playing in a professional hockey league, and he said playing against top talent over in Finland, right?
Yep.
So that's good. He talked about how that's important and how in that essence they feel like he's maybe a little bit closer to being ready to contribute, on the pro ice than maybe some of the other draft picks who would be coming out maybe a little bit fresher to some of the higher competition levels and things. So that's exciting. Not that there's any like rush to get him up, but if he plays a year in Rochester and has a nice year, then you never know where it's going to go from there. He's a cool kid. Like when you watch his interviews, like you could tell his English is a little bit broken, but he speaks very clearly. Like his diction is very good, and I can understand what he's saying. Good, you can just tell he doesn't have like a expansive vocabulary, which he's going to learn, as he plays in North America and things. But he seems like he has some good energy, and I'm excited for the pick. So we'll see what happens. I wonder if it's going to lead to any of our other prospects, being expendable. We've already seen the one trade with Savoy, which we'll get into later, but I don't know if there's going to be more to come or not. So I guess we'll see what Kevin Adams has in store for that. But we can transition into. I think that probably wraps that up, right? You want to go? You
Yeah,
want to get
yeah,
into
yeah.
RFAs here?
It's so funny. We're off for 2 weeks, and we're cooking a little bit, and then it's like, oh my god, what do we do next? But so yeah, dude.
I was
Yeah,
ready for you to pick up there, and then you just weren't. So I was like, all right, we're going into
that's fucking funny.
RFAs.
That's fucking hilarious. So, dude, yeah, the Sabres brought back some of their RFAs. Cal Clegg, Brett Murray, Mason Yopp still be your Rochester contributors. That's great. And then they brought back Jacob Bryson on a 1 year deal. And dude, we said at the end of the season, like Jacob Bryson didn't play bad. Like he was actually, pretty decent towards the end of his, Sabres tenure last year. And I'm glad they brought him back because he seems like he's like one of the guys. Like he goes on vacation all the time. Like every time they do like a all-star break like vacation thing, he's in all the pictures with the boys. He obviously a great teammate for like sitting on the bench and in the press box for so long in the beginning of the season, and then when he finally gets his number called, he plays pretty well. So you kind of need some guys like that. And then they signed back Yoki Haru, 1 year deal, avoiding arbitration because he was arbitration eligible, and $3.1 million for Henry. And I guess it's just like for me, it's meh. Like I'm kind of disappointed to be honest with you. I kind of want Henry to move, and from what it looks like, I'm not going to jump too ahead into UFA signings yet, but they didn't really do much on defense, and that kind of worries me.
Yeah, it's like you said, those first few, Clegg, Murray, Yops, those will be your AHLers. I am happy about the Bryson deal. It was nice to see that, they kind of like let him go and then like just were able to get him kind of signed to a cheaper deal because
Oh
the
yeah, because
the
his
offer match would have been like 1.9 mil and they ended up
yep,
signing him for I think like 900K or something.
yep, yeah. That's how you know Bryson's a vibes guy. Takes cut $1 million off my sheet, and I'll come back. That's fine.
Do you think he was getting other offers though?
No, probably not. He probably if we were to like not sign him and just like let him walk to UFA, he probably would have got a 1 year deal like somewhere else, but around the same money for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing with him too is like I had this thought today is like if you think about like the defense core, like now Power has a couple years and Darlene obviously has a lot of experience, and I guess there's Samuelson too, but Samuelson's been kind of on and off the ice. I don't know. There's not like I know that they tried the experiment with Eric Johnson, but I feel like there's not like that true like veteran that can be like that can just kind of guide these kids. Like that's like a defensive guy. Like Bryson, like if he's gonna be like an impactful like third line or third pairing defenseman or something, like it's not going to be because he's contributing offensively. So he's got to kind of learn like that gritty side of the game and be able to block shots and kind of contribute in some other ways and just not be a liability with like breaking pucks out of the ice and things. And I feel like now that Darlene's got some more experience. Power's got some more experience. Maybe they can coach that up a little bit more. And with some of these signings, they can maybe you work that a little bit because obviously Eric Johnson was a fail, and you bring in Connor Clifton, but I don't know. The jury's still out on him, I guess. But hopefully he can continue making strides because we saw that last year, and I'm hopeful that if he keeps playing and has consistency, and there's Lindy Ruff there now, that you never know. You never know what those guys are going to be. I do think the Henry Yoki Haru is a little high though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I think I saw some projections from Evolving Hockey that he would have got like 4 million, like on a 1 year deal. So we did sign up for like less than what was like, those guys do amazing work. So like their projections are pretty accurate. So 3.1 is a little less than what we kind of thought it would come in at. But still,
That's
man, there's
surprising to
just
me, but it doesn't matter. Like we have so much cap space. It's like it's not
it's
gonna.
weird. Like there's almost no room. Like he almost doesn't belong for the style that Lindy wants. And like we can transition into the UFAs now because they completely redid their fucking bottom lines. The bottom line, like the bottom sixes,
Mm-hmm.
it's faster, it's harder to play against, it's stronger, and it's bigger. And I'm pretty excited for it. I think that this will, with Lindy's style, help us a lot.
All right, so we'll give kind of before we break this down because this is where a lot of the meat is that we'll have some more discussion here for sure. But your as far as your overview goes now, because everyone was pissed at Adams when he said, "Oh, we're certainly a better team now than we were," because everyone wants that big moves. You think they are as of right now? You'd say that they're currently better than they were last year.
I would say that, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think
Adams
that's
right
pretty
now.
certain, honestly.
I give Adams right now a B minus for the offseason, only because he didn't get a top six forward. And if he did trade for a top six forward, like in the next couple of months before camp or whatever, it goes up to an A because he would have done everything. Everything on the checklist would have been checked off.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit more at the end of the episode,
But
like
so far,
the
so
need
far
for
so
that.
good.
But yeah, I'm with you, man. I think it's everyone's like freaking out because you didn't get that big name, that big fish, but like they were not going to come here. Like you have to get better first. You have to prove that it's a better environment, and you have to break that drought before you're going to attract any of these UFAs. But there's no denying. We did our Kevin Adams show about a month ago. There's no denying that this is the most active he's been as far as like getting UFAs into Buffalo over the last in 3 years. Like he hasn't had a very active UFA signing over the last few years. So this was truly the first offseason. And he kind of said this where they're going to be more aggressive and make some moves. Last season was the failure of, just kind of banking on everyone repeating their career years and whatnot. And they didn't feel, the urgency enough. So I think he went out and targeted some right role players. I'm sure Lindy's kind of helping him with this, kind of steering and getting in his ear as well, as far as like, these are guys that we should be targeting and guys
It
that
makes
I've
sense
played
to me.
against.
How do you feel about that? Because it makes sense. It makes total sense to me. Wouldn't you want to get the players that your coach asked for?
Yeah, and Lindy literally said, I mean, we were saying everyone was saying like we need role guys, we need role guys, and one of the first things in Lindy's introductory press conference was we need to establish roles, we need to have accountability, and that's what these guys are, and so I think that Lindy definitely is helping Kevin Adams with a lot of these moves, and do I think they're incredibly better than they were at the end of last season? Like, no, that's how necessary is that? The goal is to make the playoffs. If you're going to be a Stanley Cup contender in a few years, as guys continue to develop and gain experience, then that becomes a reality. Then, but the roster right now is it better to make the playoffs? I would say undeniably yes, and we'll get into some more of that later. But we can start with Sam Lafferty if you want. So Sam Lafferty signed a 2-year deal with us for $2 million. What are your thoughts on Sam Lafferty, the player?
He's fast. He's fast, and he's going to be our fourth line center. It's I when we get into all these players, I like the concept that like they're all going to rotate. I feel like they're not going to be like day in and day out. We're going to get fresh legs in here for every game, and that excites me. And Lafferty is a speedster. He's a hitter. He hits everything that moves. Sabres targeted so many guys that were in like the I think Lafferty or Melanstein, one of them is in like the 99th. No, it was McLeod who's 99th. Uh, Melanstein's 96th and Lafferty's 97th in speed in the
Mm-hmm.
NHL. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you look at NHL Edge, so they targeted fast fuckers. Like they're all fast. Lafferty's going to hit everything that moves. He's a career 49% faceoff guy, so not the best, but I mean, there were guys on our team running at like 35% last year, so it's better than what we had.
Yeah, he should help with
So,
that.
and he got a 2 year deal. One of the only guys on the team that as a UFA that got a 2 year deal, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, and I appreciated his press conference because, and this is where I can tell the difference between bringing these guys on with a purpose with Lindy, because all of the guys that we signed, they all gave like a 10-minute press conference, and they all talked about they were already talking about their roles, like that. It's been kind of like clearly outlined, and Lafferty was a guy who talked about face offs, and he was actually asked a good question about like the mentality of it or experience. Is there a skill to it? And he's like, experience obviously helps, but it's more of a mental thing, like what can you get away with, and if you've taken 6 or 7 draws against the same guy throughout the game, what are you going to change to kind of, so you can tell he has some good experience there. And as a fourth line center, he talked about getting more defensive zone starts and feeling accountable to obviously feel the urgency to gain the puck, and how critical it is to get possession in the defensive zone. So it was just crazy to hear how like he's coming in, and he was told, this is why we're getting you, like you're coming in to help us with this and this. It wasn't just like a fluff press conference where we're like, oh yeah, like I think I can bring some speed and like hit some guys. Like he was given specifics, and I was like, if he's given specifics, he's been given specifics, which is good. So, all right, you want to move on to the next signing here, Jason Zucker,
I
1 year, $5 million deal. This was our biggest spend.
I enjoy this signing for what it is. Jason Zucker, like he's 32 now, a little bit older. Maybe doesn't have the speed that he used to have. He was pretty good in Pittsburgh, like really good in Pittsburgh, I'd say, and then went to Arizona and kind of lost his step a little bit. But they played him in a fourth line role in Arizona. That's kind of not like his thing. Like I actually read a great article written by Anthony of Expected Buffalo. Shout out Anthony, that showcased that Zucker is actually a pretty good finisher if he plays with like a good passer.
Well, he's
So
good in front of the net too.
I'm excited for him to maybe play an elevated role. We'll see where he slots in, but if he does slot in on the second line, which I know would piss people off, it will definitely piss people off. But I'm open to it. I'm open to seeing what he can do with the Cousins and a Quinn, but Quinn is one of the best passers on the team. He's an awesome player, so I'm excited to see what they can do like off the rush a little bit. And he's got veteran chops, and that's kind of what our team needs, like an adult. Sometimes I felt like last year they needed, and I know Oposo and Gergensons did their best, and Eric Johnson, but when you're not putting up like any like really good play on the ice, you can't really adult because it's not being backed up by play. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see
Mm-hmm.
what Zucker does, and I'm rooting for him. He seems like a really good guy too.
Yeah, his media availability got me the most excited out of any of the new players, and I really appreciated all of their interviews. But the one thing that Zucker said, which kind of ignited a fire in me the most, was when he talked about how he specifically talked to Lindy about how he's coming in to be like a leader on the team, and that they need to start off hot. Like they cannot afford to come out of the gates slow, and they need to have a good training camp and an intense training camp, and they know the urgency to start off and keep people accountable. And the way he just like handles the media, I mean, you can tell he's been around for a while. Guys get better with that as they get older anyways, but like the answers to his questions, like, again, I know it seems like I kind of shit on Oposo a lot, but like it was like more, it was so insightful compared to like what I've gotten in the past, and I know Oposo was kind of like, he was done. Like I get it. There's some fatigue, with that throughout the years, like undoubtedly. But Lafferty seems energized. He seems, or not Lafferty, well, him too, I guess. But Zucker seems energized to come in and take on that leadership role, and I think he can do it well. I'm excited to see what he can do. And there somewhat is, I don't know if you disagree or agree or not, but it seems like there's somewhat of like a second line spot in flux right now. Like there's
Yep. Agreed.
so there's going to be, there's a few options of guys that can slot in there with Cousins and Quinn, and if he can earn some minutes on more of a top line, then and that's the other thing he talked about too is they talked about his point totals and whatnot. And he's like, he talked to what you were just talking about. I was on a fourth line, and when you're on the fourth line, point totals generally go down if you look across the league. And he goes, as much as I don't like to use that as an excuse, there was some more limited opportunities. And do I think I still have that aspect of my game? Absolutely. So there was confidence there. So we'll see what happens, and
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see through training camp and whatnot what happens with him
Yeah.
specifically in the
I
lineup.
I'm excited to see him in more of a scoring role because I think he still does have that in his
Hmm.
bag. And he bagged 14 goals last year. Like that's not nothing. Like if he can hit 20 this year, I think we're all happy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, all right, well, let's move on then to Nicholas Abe-Kubo signs a 1-year, $1.5 million deal, looking like probably going to be on the fourth line there with maybe Lafferty and Malenstein. That might already be a line that's kind of in pen there. But what do you think about NAK?
I do love the fact that we look at the Washington Capitals and we're like, we're just gonna pluck 2/3 of your fourth line and bring it over here. Dude, Abe Kubel is awesome. He's so good defensively. He probably like that line probably will not provide a ton of like actual offense,
Yeah.
but I love this guy. Gonna grind on the walls. He's gonna hit people. He's just a good a good fourth liner when you see it, and he's one of them.
He talked about embracing that role with the team, and how he's like weirdly like kind of a vet because he's like one of the older guys on the team now, even though I think he himself is only like 24, but our team is just so damn young. But he's won a cup. I mean, so he has that experience of winning a Stanley Cup, right? Because he won with Colorado and Bo
Colorado.
and Byram.
Yep.
Yeah, so he already knows Bo. He said he reached out to Byram, and Byram told him, hey, the guys are all great. We're ready to get to work and whatnot. So he's got some links with the team. Obviously, he knows Malenstein and whatnot. So you feel like he's going to be comfortable coming in. It was interesting when he talked about his contract and signing the 1 year $1.5 million deal. And we talked about this on the last episode about how like you don't know, there's so many factors that go into signing a contract that you don't know who you're going to get because everybody's wants and needs are a little bit different. So he talked about how one of the things he told his agent was that he wanted to go to a young team where he could grow with the team and hopefully play really good and earn that next contract. And I thought that was kind of interesting that like that was one of his things, and obviously that there's an opportunity there with the Sabres that is a team that is going to have to make decisions on who's that second wave of extensions that they're going to sign. And if he comes in and plays really well, he talked about how he thinks he has some more offensive upside, and who knows? I mean, you can ink yourself a nice 2 or 3 year deal and maybe gain some stability. But I thought his interview was really really good. He seems like a humble kid, and I'm excited to see what he can do here with Buffalo. But
Yeah. Great.
it was funny.
I'm
It
excited. I'm excited for this fourth line.
it was funny too because during his interview, someone like walked in, and like you could hear the audio of someone having a conversation in the back, and he like apologized for it mid interview. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry for that, guys." I was like, that's kind of like funny and awesome, but
That's awesome.
because he
So
said like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I'm like, so
it's not his
funny.
fault. So before we jump into Dennis Gilbert, I want to ask you. So this fourth line here, we touched on Malenstein, we touched on Lafferty, we touched on Abe Kubel. The odd man out on this team is Peyton Krebs.
Hmm.
I kind of like the fact that the fourth line is theoretically four guys deep. Where like, let's say Lafferty needs to sit for a night and Krebs draws in, or let's say Abe Kubel sits for a night and Lafferty draws back in. I kind of like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean,
So
especially like throughout the season, like whatever guys get tired or guys get injured or one guy's riding a heater. Like Krebs has always been kind of like a streaky player, not necessarily with points, but like where he goes on these games where he has like a 5 game heater where he's just making plays and setting up guys. So
setting
you
up guys
can,
and no, he's passing to Zemgus Girgensons, so and who's not scoring, so everyone's getting pissed off at Peyton Krebs when in reality it's Zemgus Girgensons being a dog shit goal scorer.
But that'll be interesting, and it'll be like and for Krebs, that's got to light a fuel under you. You know, like, hey, am I getting squeezed out here? Is this roster kind of outgrowing me? I like there's got to you know there's going to be internal motivation there to make it work. He's the guy that's been here in Buffalo. We traded for him, and so you never know how that chemistry is going to work out. Maybe Krebs's game really fits with one of these guys, and they're clicking, and he earns that spot. But the fact that they can be interchangeable, and if they all work well together, then that's fine. They all have similar games. Like Krebs is the same kind of thing. He's kind of swift. He's kind of agile. He's good with the forecheck and things. So I think stylistically they can all kind of gel on the ice.
Absolutely.
So yeah, well, I guess TBD there. But
Yeah. Next guy here, Dennis Gilbert, defenseman. A little bit of a rugged guy. I think he's going to be our eighth defenseman, and I think he's going to draw in for. Honestly, I think he plays 20 games, dude, at least.
yeah, where was he
Just
last year?
Calgary. He actually
Yeah.
scored on us, which is hilarious.
Oh yeah,
But
that's right. That was
uh,
like one of the games. We had like 3 games in a row where like
what we
some
got?
people with like no points had like goals on us.
Sounds like the Sabres. But I like his style. You know, he comes in, he's gonna fuck people up, and that's his game. He's a decent skater. He can move the puck, and he'll check. We need guys like this, so I'm happy with it. And he's
And
a
plus,
local
he's
guy.
from Buffalo.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's so that's so cool. So he's got to be happy to be here, and even if we waive him and he clears and goes to Rochester and comes back up, throughout the season, it's fine.
Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, it'd actually be if that happens, like it'd be kind of cool to see him like play a game in Rochester. I'm sure he's like seen games there too growing up. So
Yeah, he's probably like, I
yes.
want my NHL money. Actually, he's on a one-way deal, so he'll get his NHL money either way.
Well, you got Darlene Power, Samuelson, Byram, Clifton,
Yoki Haru
Bryson, Yoki Haru. That's seven. So
and
then
Gilbert.
and then Gilbert. Yeah, so
So
he'd
we'll
be
probably, I'm assuming we'll carry 13 forwards and 8 defense. That's what
yeah.
I'm assuming.
Nah, well, 3 goalies.
No, we're not carrying 3 forwards. That's not. Don't even put that into the ether. Don't. I can't believe you just said that.
Doesn't Detroit have like 4 goalies right now?
Detroit has 6, bro. They have 6. It's insane what they're doing. I don't. We could talk about the Iser plan and other teams like in another episode because oh my
Yeah.
god, I want to rip Detroit so bad. But speaking
Yeah,
of
that's definitely next.
goaltenders,
I want to do. I think that's the plan for the next one. We'll do the winners and losers of free agency, more league wide
speaking
stuff. But
speaking of Detroit goaltenders, we brought in James Reimer, who this
yeah,
is quite interesting to me. The guy can still play. He can still stop pucks. He's 36 years old, I think. If he goes down to Rochester, I wouldn't be surprised either way. If he goes down to Rochester and is our third goalie, or if he is the backup in Buffalo and Levi goes to Rochester. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think I don't. They seem pretty dead set on like UPL and Levi in Rochester, but am I opposed to another year of Levi in Rochester? No, I'm not. I almost think that's the best thing for him. Like especially if UPL is like coming out of the gates and he's playing good. I mean, technically we still have to get that deal done. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I'm sure they'll get something in there, but yeah, I mean, like I'm just looking at his numbers from last year. I mean, he started 25 games. I mean, he had a 3.11 goals against and a 904 save percentage. So it's like that's not like that's not bad numbers, especially with the the craziness of the goaltender position, and some of the inefficiencies there. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be fine with that. Like, how many? If you're saying if he's the backup and then we send Levi down?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what I want to happen, like as it stands right now.
Yeah,
Levi gets to be the number one in Rochester, play most of the games, and
yeah,
if one of the two guys are not great here, like let's say UPL flounders and obviously Breimer like can't like hold it down, we can always just bring Levi up and waive Reimer and hope he clears, and it's no big deal.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a smart signing either way because you needed to have another veteran goalie anyways, and I do think that like I'm not in a hurry for Levi. I enjoyed watching him dominate in the AHL last year, and I want him to do it again and just keep getting better and building up his confidence. And if you're going to sign UPL to 2 or 3 years anyways, you got some time to wait on there. It's going to be better for him to do you think it's better for him to get 30 games in the NHL next year, or 60
50,
down in
50 or
Rochester,
60. Yeah,
55, whatever?
I don't know. I probably the 30 here if we're being honest, but because he was decent. He wasn't good, he wasn't bad. He was decent here. I guess it really just depends. We'll see in camp, honestly, but I
Yeah,
think right now, if I had to lean one way, it would be UPL, the number one guy, Reimer, the backup, and Levi and Rochester.
yeah. I guess I'm fine with that. Predictively, I think it'll be UPL Levi, but
Right.
because I think they're going to want to value the NHL experience, over that. But we'll see. And I just think Levi comes into camp and does good and doesn't look bad. So we'll see what happens there. But
Yep.
either way, we talked about it before. It's a good thing to at least have that flexibility, because if you don't bring in anybody that's capable and you feel handcuffed or stuck, then that can be what's
That
driving your
ends your
decision.
season, dude. That ends your
Yeah,
whole season before it even starts.
yeah, well, it ends your season, and you don't want that to be driving your decision. Like, you want to be able to make a smart decision because you have the pieces in place that allow you to make the decision that's best for the team and the player. And so I think signing him is a good idea, anyways, to allow you that flexibility and not force you one way or another. But
Right. And then they brought in a couple of career AHLers, Josh Dunn, Jack Rathbone, a goalie, and Felix Sandstrom. So I'm assuming, Sandstrom will be your AHL backup. And then this dude, I gotta say, this guy, this Colton Pullman guy, we gotta talk about him for just a second. He's got quite the resume on hockeyfights.com. This guy is a classic face puncher. I love it. It's so
Matt Rempe 2.0.
yeah, yeah. Can you imagine? No, it's fun. I like it. I mean, he came out of the Western Hockey League, had couple games in the ECHL. I'm sure he'll be up and down in the ECHL and AHL. It's fine, but I just wanted to give him a shout out because man, just standing in there and throwing bombs for almost every game it's not for the faint of heart.
We get the Empire State Building versus the Pool Man.
Did you see? Speaking of Rempy, did you see what he's so? You this is probably before your fandom for hockey because you're still feeling like you're catching up on hockey's history here. But there was a Montreal Canadian and Edmonton Oiler. He probably played for other teams too. Georges Laraque, big boy, like 6'7", couldn't fucking play hockey for a wink. All like in the mid 2000s or early 2000s and late 90s, all they did was just hire guys that were big and could fight on the ice, and that's what George Laraque was, a big fighter. So they got The Rock training with Matt Rempe, like teaching him how to fight, how to use his leverage, how to use his size.
I did see
I
that.
mean, it's cool. It is nice for Larocque's kind of like a legend because he was such a good fighter. But just to see, like, I did not think in 2024 you would see like that role come back. It's insane.
Yeah,
So
so
good for Rempe. It is kind of cool to see, but it was just kind of funny.
there's gonna be another Rempe this year. It's
Oh,
gonna be it's
for
gonna be a
some
trend. Like, there's
dude,
gonna be a team that calls up a guy just to fight. Like, I
have
guarantee
you
you're gonna see that.
I have a question, not even just a hockey question, but like a question about life in general. Because I felt like this for a little while now. Do you think that like old trends are coming back? Like stuff that was kind of relevant in the 2000s is making its way back in 2024, and it's weird. It's
Well,
such.
like what? Like what? I need an example.
I don't have anything off the top of my head. I'm just saying. Like I'm just fucking saying. Maybe it's in my old age. I long for those times. So it's just weird that like the fighting role is like all of a sudden we embrace fighting again. Like
Yeah,
that wasn't a thing.
yeah, yeah. It could be. It could be. That's interesting. I mean, I'm sure now that you said put that in my head, I'm gonna, like,
You're gonna notice some shit. You're gonna
I'm
notice
gonna
some
notice
stuff.
it.
That's funny.
Also,
Let's bring back the Choco Taco, by the way.
oh
Bring
yeah, that is a good. That is a good. No, the SpongeBob with the gumball eyes. Oh
yeah,
my
bring those
gosh,
back too.
those were the best. So I guess you could say that Rempe is smelling what the Rock is cooking.
Oh wow, you just workshop that in your brain and let it fly. I liked it.
Before we go on to the trade here, and I don't know if we want to give overviews of this or not. We kind of already did, but I do want to shout out Brandon Byro because he is one of
This is your
my.
this is your
I
guy.
know, I
You need
know
to write him a
Byro is
letter.
my
You need to
guy.
write him a letter and tell him how much you love him.
I do like Brendan Byro, and sadly he accepted. I don't think it was a trade. I think it was just that
Yeah, he just signed somewhere.
he
San
just
Jose?
signed with. No, I think it was Seattle. I think.
Seattle? I knew it was an
Yeah,
S.
yeah. So he's with Seattle now. I would assume their AHL
Yeah,
affiliate,
the
but
the what are they? The Coachella Valley Firebirds, I think they are. They've been to the
so
finals two
it's not
years
as
in a
bad
row.
as the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah,
Fucking
2 years in a row they went to the finals and lost to the Chocolate Town.
yeah, it's fucking chocolate and white. Goddamn Chocolate Town. But I am gonna miss Brandon Byro. I liked him as a player, and I know he was loved in Rochester. He was a good player for them for a few years, and it never worked out, up here. But you never know what happens in Coachella Valley. Maybe we'll be playing against him in a Seattle Kraken jersey next year, so we'll see. But shout out Brandon Byro because I've always liked Byro.
All right, dude. The most exciting part of our discussion here: the Buffalo Sabres made a trade. After I bookmarked. I didn't come back with the tweets. I didn't come back with the tweets because I had people in my replies because I said people were mad. It's July 2nd and we didn't get a trade. And I'm like, all right, guys, relax. It's July 2nd. I had so many people in my replies. Kevin Adams is sleeping at the wheel. He's not going to do nothing. It's not happening. And then boom, they make a trade. They trade a prospect. That's something that the Sabres don't do. Traded Matthew Savoy to Edmonton for center Ryan McLeod. And I love this. I'm so happy that they decided to move a prospect for a guy that can actually contribute in a role on the NHL team. And
Yeah,
is it
it
an
was
overpay?
needed.
I don't know if it's an overpay. Like I like Matthew Savoy. People are looking, dude. Canada's acting like they traded for the next version of fucking Braden Point. It is insane. The discourse on this trade is crazy.
It is. It is
I
crazy.
get Matt Savoy scored 2.09 points per game in the Western Hockey League. Guess what, guys? He had a horrible playoff. Horrible for his standards. If you're setting a standard of 2.09 points in the regular season, you better bring your game in the playoffs. It was not that great. He also no-showed at the World Juniors, got hurt. He's been hurt 3 separate times with as a member, as a property of the Buffalo Sabres. So you're not exactly trading your best prospect here. There are guys that have leaped him. I think Kulik is by far our best prospect. I think I liked what Oslin provided in Rochester in his short stint here,
Yeah, we'll
and
see.
Wahlberg too. That's three forwards
Well, and Rosen.
already and Roseanne too.
Yeah,
All four forwards already in Rochester that I think have leaped Matthew Savoy, and
It, and you
they
can add
got on.
Consta now.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how he plays. And
Yeah,
so he's not playing center in the NHL. He's too small. He he's gonna play the wing, and that diminishes his value as well. So I'm not even upset at giving up the player, and I liked him. I wanted him to be on this, like make the Sabres and be a little water bug out there. But I think this is a great deal for the Sabres because of what McLeod provides.
yeah. I think I'm with you. It's hard to say is it an overpay or not. Like when we look back in a couple years, will it be an overpay? I don't know. It depends because I don't. I also don't think that McLeod has like reached his ceiling yet either. He's only 24, and so like if you're telling me McLeod can turn into a I don't know a 50-point guy like for a second round pick, like that seems like it's kind of fair value. Like it's those guys, 50-point guys just aren't left and right. I mean, I know they hand out points in the NHL like fucking Skittles now, but still like I don't know. And also like I think if you're the Sabres, you mentioned like the injury history and things and him playing in the Western Hockey League and not being in Rochester. I know you've been watching him and talking to him, but he's probably the guy you have the least data about as far as like your prospects go
That's
and
true.
that are like more ready to be in the league. So if you're choosing between a Kulik who's been in Rochester for 2 years and Roseanne who's been in Rochester for 2 years and Savoy who's been banged up and playing in the Western Hockey League, had the whole Wenatchee transfer to Moose Jaw last year, like there's you're just I'm sure they feel just a little bit more certain with guys like Kulik and Roseanne and them and if you're gonna trade one of those top level prospects with the numbers that Savoy put up, he had high value, so you can try and capitalize on it. Like, and they got a decent player for him, so I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I do think Savoy will turn into a decent NHLer. I think, but maybe it's just more comparable to like McLeod. Like, honestly, so I guess we'll see, but I'm also not going to be too bent out of shape about it because we've been asking Kevin Adams to make a trade, and he did, and it's not a nothing player, so
Dude, this just reminded
it's
me.
fun.
So at Dev Camp, uh, they were I don't remember what point in time. I think they might have been like a quiet time. Like they were maybe it was during like the trophy presentation for the players, like whoever won like the prospect tournament or whatever. And you could hear someone in the crowd saying, "Make a trade, Kevin." And the next day, he trades Savoy for McLeod.
I
Oh,
heard
that's
that. I heard
so
that.
funny. I think that's hilarious. He's like, "All right, I'll do it. Don't tell me other. I'll do." He's probably sitting there stewing. He's like, "These people think I won't do it. They think I won't do it," and then he did it.
I'm glad it was just like one person, but I've seen like some ridiculous comments too about like, oh, I'm glad the kids are seeing the toxicity early on.
Oh
They can
my
use
God,
it. Like,
relax,
yeah,
fucking
no, I know.
relax. Some of them don't even speak English, like you said. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure they didn't even hear it either. But no, I like I said, I'm fine with the trade. It's
Let's talk about McLeod for a minute.
yeah, go ahead.
This guy is so
I had a
goddamn
thought that I
fast.
wanted, but I lost it, so I'll let you go
Okay.
because hopefully it comes back to me.
This guy is fast as shit. He's so fast. It's gonna be so fun to see. Picture this in your head. The puck is going behind the net, and Owen Power is going back to retrieve it, and McLeod is doing a little, circle in front of his net, and then Power gives it to him, and then McLeod just skates the puck out just like that.
Hmm.
That's what his role is going to be, and he's a good forechecker. He's not exactly physical. Oilers fans have been calling him a little bit of a softie, but I don't think every guy on your team needs to be bowling people over either. So I'm excited to see how his game translates with the speed that we have on the rest of the roster.
I mean, they're definitely putting an emphasis on speed. That's for sure. And McLeod, McLeod literally got the call. I was just watching it when he was at like his buddy's wedding. Like it's either their family member's wedding or a buddy's wedding, and like, oh, I just thought of my thought too. Okay, so I'll get to that after this. So, like, how? What do you think he felt when you're at a wedding, you're probably drunk or whatever, just having a good time with your buddies, and then you get the news you're going from Edmonton, who was one game away from the Stanley Cup, to Buffalo. Like, that had to be kind of shitty,
Oh,
honestly.
dude, he's probably still upset. I wouldn't blame him either. How can you possibly blame this guy for being upset for being traded from, like you
Yeah.
said, a team that was one game away from winning the Stanley Cup to a team that hasn't been in the playoffs in 13 years? Like, he's 24 years old. He was 11 years old the last time the Sabres made the playoffs.
Oh my god. Yeah, and you could tell, not that he looked like pissed off in his press conference, but you could tell he was kind of shocked, and like, I mean, not. And he wasn't like I said, I wasn't getting the warm and fuzzies like I was from all the other players that we signed. Obviously, those are UFAs, so they chose to come here. It's a little different. So I get it. There's some shock there, but what I was going to say though was going why I think this makes sense for Kevin Adams is because he's going to be an RFA too. So and that he kind of talked about that, how like if you're going to bring in guys, ideally it's guys that you want to hopefully extend, and it gives them a little bit more leniency there too if they want to get that done.
Yeah, we've got that team control, so
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not like a one and done kind of thing. We're gonna extend him eventually.
Yep. And so there was only like there's probably like as soon as that first wave of like free agents go, who, let's be honest, like they weren't signing with the Sabres. You're just not getting those guys right now. I'm sure that pool of Kevin Adams like players go like it just shrinks immediately, and then you got to start looking at other factors to kind of tie break. Like, and if McLeod was one of those guys that they were targeting, also had an RFA status, which would give them some control, then I think that makes sense as a player fit, but then also as like a kind of like a management fit too
Yeah, and
with the build.
I'm glad we got this specific player because he's gonna like fit a role. But I've been seeing like on Twitter and whatnot, some people with connections. I think Chad might have said it in a reply or not. Maybe it wasn't even him, but it was someone. Maybe it was someone from like another organization that the Sabres have kind of been like offering Savoy to like every team. Like
Yeah.
this is our guy. If you want one of our guys, this is the one that you're gonna get. So they clearly had like his name was out there, is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And we brought back a good piece. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how it makes sense how the Sabres must have felt about him in comparison with the other young players, not only on the roster, but in the prospect pipeline. So they just got to make sure that they chose correctly, but also you can't be afraid. There are so many guys, like so many fans that are afraid that, like, oh my God, we traded this guy. He's going to put up 96 points on McDavid's wing. And it's like, maybe there have been guys in Edmonton, believe it or not, that have not played well next to McDavid or Draisaitl. Like it does happen.
Yeah. And teams don't have like a top nine. Like there's only so many guys that you could pay a big contract. And like say Savoy came up with the Sabres and was a great player, well, you're gonna have to move on from somebody else. So that okay, Savoy's in, but maybe Jack Quinn's out. There's only so many room for these guys anyway. So again, you needed to trade for talent now because you have enough pieces in place and you have a ton of prospects in the pipeline. It's like you said, you can't be afraid to make a big deal. We've said it here, you can't be afraid to lose a deal. And I think in a couple of years we'll look back on this and say it was probably an okay deal. And if you end up losing it, like was it a necessary loss for the position the Sabres are in? Probably yes. So I'll be interested to see. Do you think Kevin Adams is going to make any more moves? That'll kind of lead us into our last piece here as far as like, do you think the roster is finalized? Do you think we're going to have anything else coming up over the next few weeks? Like what do you think is on their to-do list between Lindy and Kevin?
I think that Kevin Adams right now should go to a nice beach and hang out and drink some martinis for a month and then come back, rejuvenated by camp and see what we've got going on in camp. And if someone says, like, let's say Winnipeg around that time is like, okay, we'll move on from Ehlers. Like, we waited you out. We can't wait anymore. He wants out. We'll move him. That could be an advantage for us. Like, I don't think necessarily that they need to make a move at this current moment, but I and a lot of other people would probably be very happy if they did go out and got another scoring winger or
Hmm.
another defenseman. But I think we can be patient right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think there's a rush for that. And like you said, I think as much as you want the roster to be finalized now, it doesn't have to be. And moves can even be made during the season if they have some cap space and they're going to make a trade deadline move because pieces become more expendable at the trade deadline, and you can potentially get better value at the trade deadline when guys have contracts that are coming up for the next year and they're just trying to kind of offload them to get something back in return. So there's options there. Say the Sabres do come out next year and they do start off hot and they're actually in the race and it's like, okay, this is the year we got to push our chips in. Let's go make a move. Let's get a guy. Like there's that option then too. So it doesn't need to be finalized now. I'm with you too.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So with a quick math here, after signing the rest of their RFAs, like Krebs, UPL, and whatnot, and they get their new deals, on the high end, we'll have about $7.5 million in cap space.
Hmm.
Do you think it's not great if we go into the season with that much space? Because there are a lot of fans around here that want us to spend the cap, but I'm looking around the league and I'm like, what else are we supposed to spend it on right now? You know?
Yeah.
Like, and I get there are people like, oh, go find someone, go find a scoring winger. Well, it's like no one else has, no one else has done it yet.
Yeah.
Natchez hasn't moved. Ehlers hasn't moved. Zegras hasn't moved. There's probably a couple other guys I can think of that were in the rumor mill for a while that also haven't moved. So I can't really be upset if they go into the season with that much money in cap space.
They're not gonna spend to the cap this season. Absolutely not. Because I'm of the belief that I honestly don't think there is an internal cap from Terry Pagula. I don't believe that's the case. I just think or not Terry, Kevin is because he's said this multiple times. I think Kevin is scared of the upcoming contracts, and you're going to have to pay Quinn. You're going to have to pay Paterka. You're going to have to pay Benson eventually. So their years to spend to the cap are going to be in a year or two, and I think you're just going to see that naturally as you have to pay these guys, and I think they will have to pay them because I'm expecting them to be good players. Paterka's already a good player. we're both high on Quinn, and I think Benson has a lot of potential. So there's going to be the cap's going to go up. We're going to spend to the cap, and I know that people say, "Oh, well, the cap is going up, and why else would you buy out Skinner if you're not going to use that money this year?" I'd be totally fine with just like Big Baller Bean if you go into the season with a little bit of cap room because injuries happen, or you maybe you need to acquire a guy and you need some freedom there, or you need to make a move. I don't think they're going to spend to the cap this year. I don't anticipate many more moves. Maybe like one signing or two. If there's a big move made, maybe that gets it there. But I'm thinking there. Kevin Adams seems, from what I've heard in the press, he seems very worried. Isn't the right word, but maybe just over preparing for those next contracts and knowing that number is gonna escalate and go up. So I think they will spend to the cap. I don't think it's gonna happen this year though.
Makes sense. And like you said, who knows? Maybe like someone goes down and you're like, oh shit, I gotta go grab somebody. Like this is the time. Maybe there's like urgency, or if we start hot and Kevin's like, okay, I gotta capitalize on this. Like
Yeah,
maybe we'll
yeah.
see.
Well, what
We'll
are your
see.
thoughts, real quick, on that? On those two things, like the if we don't go in like not spending the Skinner money or like the internal cap, you have like thoughts on that?
Well, I thought I thought Skinner was an addition by subtraction anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not too concerned with you got to spend his money specifically. Like I would love it. It would make me so happy. Like in 2 weeks, if they trade for Trevor Zegras and your top six is Paterka, uh, Tage, Tuck, Zegras, Cousins, Quinn, that's fucking good. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
really good.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I'd be happy about it, but
Yeah.
I'm not like clamoring for it like just yet.
Do you think Jeff had a big market, or do you think he just took the 3 million from Edmonton because he knows he's going to make the playoffs and he wants to make the playoffs? Like he's made his money. Like
I
what
would
do you think?
assume he had a couple offers around the same amount, but
Yeah. My
Edmonton.
gosh, we were overpaying him by 6 mil.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably put his value as like a $4 to $4.5 million player now. Like that deal,
Yeah.
everyone knew that deal was terrible the second
Yeah.
it was signed.
Yeah.
He kind of bent us over a barrel, and props to him. He got his money, and now he's going to get what I think it's like a third, 2/3 of that money, like for the rest of the deal. So
Yeah.
good for Jeff. Good for Jeff. But I also can kind of see that not working out in Edmonton really because he's not fast, and that team plays fast too.
Yeah. All right. I think that pretty much wraps up. I got one last question that I don't have in here, but I just want to kind of get your thoughts on it. We can get into this more with the prospects. But do you think realistically now with these moves that we made, like, do you think this has pretty much blocked someone from coming up next year? Like, do you think those top prospects are going to are kind of locked into Rochester now, or do you think there's still room for one of those guys to come up this year?
Dude, I still think there's room. Like, what? Who's to say Yuri Cooley doesn't come into camp bigger, stronger, faster, and he's got that NHL level shot? He could theoretically be your second line left winger. Like,
Hmm.
I don't want that to happen. I don't think it's great to have another 20-year-old on the Sabres roster, but there's a spot theoretically open between him and Zucker and Benson, and we'll see where the chips lie. But besides him, I don't think there's anyone else that can come up because I kind of think that like Roseanne's game kind of suits more of a bottom six now. He's not like
Yeah.
his scoring is okay, but I don't think it's he's going to light up the scoreboard, and he's kind of grittier than Kulik is. So I don't know. We'll see. I would it would be awesome if Kulik was like so damn good like that you can't send him back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be opposed to them just staying down there though. But yeah, I think it'd be one or the other, right? There's
Yeah,
certainly
there's no more room.
limited options. Yeah, there's no more room. But and then you
I,
could do
I
the Dallas thing too, like you said, where maybe you bring them up, 2/3 in the year or into the playoffs, and they they
like a
get
staying
hot.
Coven.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So,
I
um,
have one more question before we're done.
yep.
So I sent you my work that I did last night when I went through every single team's top six in the NHL based
Hmm.
off team face off. So maybe the lines aren't exactly what they're going to be. I sent you every single team, and we know the Sabres top six. You can like right now you can put like Zucker or Benson on line two. It's whatever. I don't give a shit what you think.
Yeah.
Um, I do give a shit what you think because you're my best friend, but in this exercise, I don't care what you think. But what, where do the Sabres stack up against the rest of the league? Because I will tell you, when I ranked just the top six forwards, nothing else, I had them at 14th.
Yeah. All right. All right. If I'm being honest, I think we should do this next show.
Okay, okay, we get this a little tease. This a little
Because
tease.
I think it's an excellent show concept, and also like if we decide next week we want to do like the winners and losers of free agency and kind of talk about more of the league movement,
Oh, good call.
I think it'd be
Good
a good
call.
thing at the end, so we
I'm
can leave
jumping
this
the
as
gun.
yeah, I think we can leave it as a little teaser because I'm excited to to do that talk for sure, and I think we differ a little bit with that as well. So let's plan that for next week because I think it goes good with what we want to do anyway.
Sounds good, man.
That'll just keep the listeners just kind of dialed in for another week too. So
Also, dude, we had such a better connection today.
yeah, so thanks for everybody for sticking on this week and last week because we didn't really have a dip. I was worried that we'd have like a dip in listens because I put the little like disclaimer in the beginning and like but like I said I spent like probably like 40 minutes trying like chopping and edit that thing up and it actually worked pretty good. I'm sure if you're listening like you noticed some of what I was talking about like the absences and whatnot, but I feel like I pieced it together like 85% well.
Yeah,
So we'll
you
see.
did great.
But this should sound much smoother. I didn't really notice any interruptions tonight, which is good. So
I didn't either.
um, I think yeah. All right. So I think we can finish there, right? You got anything else or no?
No, we can wrap, dude. That was great. It was nice to see you across the camera again and talk puck.
Yep, absolutely. All right, folks. Well, you know what to do. Follow us on the on Twitter or on X. Well, it almost sounds weird to say Twitter now. That's weird.
No, it doesn't.
I don't know.
You're never conforming me to saying X.
I guess I said Twitter there and I felt a little weird. So follow us on X at Sabres Spotlight. And if you have any feedback or questions for the show, go ahead and email us at sabresspotlight@gmail.com or just text us. Like if you know us personally, text us. Be like, hey, why don't you guys talk about this on the show? Like that works too.
I've had
Um,
so many people text me and be like, you sound like an idiot," and I'm like, "Well, thanks for listening, then."
that
It's
is
like
so funny.
just like ripping me, and it's like, "Hey," they're like, "What do you mean by this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad you listen to the show. This is great."
Like buddies of yours or like random
Yeah,
people?
like friends and stuff. It's cool. I like it. It makes me happy that like people are tuning into us.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. Plus, we had an email from a listener, which I don't want to spoil anything there yet.
Yeah, we'll
Hopefully, we
talk
have
about it when that whole ordeal is complete because that's so
yes,
cool.
yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens from there. But so lots of stuff to come and lots of things to talk about here in the future. We'll see everybody next week. But of course, if you don't follow us on Twitter, follow the show at Saber Spotlight, and our Twitter handles will be in the show notes down below as well. And we will see everybody in the next episode. As always, stay safe in the Saberhood.
Peace.